can't believe it's happening already. I mean, 3 times when I was writing this, just something stirred within me, and are we doing it right? Can we do it better? Why aren't we doing it right? Why aren't we doing it better? And then that daggone song. Remember the old rock bands that used to just take the guitar and crash it on? That's about where I am right now. You know, I so enjoyed that song. Honey, every time we go across the country now, every time I see crosses on the side of the road,
Yeah.
I had to pull over and cry. I have my tears so I don't crash into anybody. Thank you so much for having me back, and thanks so much for what you all do in the community. Just by way of background, just so that you know, I'm a preacher. I almost became a missionary, pastored a church for 7 years, music minister, all the good stuff. Really classified probably more as a church planner, so taking a new church from the ground up, and then calling somebody in younger, more polished, with more hair to take the pulpit, and then we moved on. Been married for 34 years, but I've known that woman right there for 5 years longer than that. We're high school sweethearts. I did dump her after the first year because she was not of like faith, if you can believe that. And then I dated the girl of my dreams, and I was at a church, folks. You know, what you mean you dated the girl? Isn't that the girl of your dreams? Not at that time in my teenage life. That didn't work out, and if you really want to know the story behind that, just to be real brief, her family was very, shall we say, didn't approve of interracial dating in Columbia, Maryland. That was a foreign thing for sure. And so there was a lot of pressure on her to just end the relationship. And then Tiffany liked to tell the end of that story, how I came crawling back to her. Realizing that she was like, I am the woman of your dreams. I've always been the woman of your dreams. I'm not sure where you got lost along the way. But honey, you got total support here. Total support. We have 4 boys, 7 pregnancies, but 4 boys. You know, we were allowed to keep 4 of them, and our eldest is 31, Nathaniel. He's out in Cali, Oakland, California. That's a whole story in and of itself. We were a little bit upset with him when he came to our living room and said, "Hey, can I stay here for 10 days?" We're like, "Yeah, sure. Come on, stay." And at the end of the 10 days, he says, "Well, I'm going to California." And what? And then our other 2 still live, the youngest 2 still live here in town, Jeremiah and Noah. And then our middle, we call him the middle child because Noah and Jeremiah are Irish twins. We tried for that girl. Somebody had a sense of humor, and apparently it wasn't well, anyway, I'll stay off that. Anyway, the middle child is in HVAC, and he's in Raleigh up there right now. So that's a little bit about the Conways. We are a very loving family. We tell jokes that you should not tell publicly. You can imagine being in an interracial home. We get all the jokes from both sides, right? We're not ashamed. Now, when someone comes to the house, we clean it up real quick. We clean the house. We all act right. But once you get to know us, as several ladies that have dated my sons have gotten to know us, and their friends as well, we let you know when you're part of the family, because all of a sudden one of us will drop a joke that should not be told in public. And then we look at you as if you'll laugh. And if you laugh, you're in. You're in. You're one of us. But if you're like, "Oh my Lord, who are these people?" It was so nice having you here. We wish you well as you depart from the Conway residence. Don't tell anyone else about us. I really struggled in some ways, and by struggle, I mean, I do ask hard questions. And I ask a lot of hard questions of myself. You know, growing up with a very conservative, independent, fundamental, blood-washed, born-again, Bible-believing Baptist background, I started asking questions at the age of 12 that even my church didn't feel comfortable with. When I was in Bible college, I probably should have gotten kicked out several times because I questioned why interracial dating or interracial marriages wasn't a thing. I even had the senior pastor of the church come to me and he looked at me and said, "You will never go anywhere. Your ministry will not be blessed if you marry that woman." Those are his words. And I immediately broke off my engagement with Tiffany. But then I began to search, and I'm like, I don't see that. You know, what do you do with Ruth? What do you do with these other people that are factored into serious bloodlines? And they play such a pivotal role in church history and biblical and Hebrew history. It just didn't make sense, and I came to myself and gave her back the engagement ring. That was the second time I came back to her. Not proud of that. It just goes to show you, if you do follow me, you will understand why I deal with bias mitigation. Because I'm still working on this guy. Things I've said, the things I've done, where I'm not where I should be. And then I challenge people to join me in that journey, because that's all of us. That is really all of us. Every time you wake up, you turn on the TV, you read a social media post, you doom scroll, all that stuff. Your mind is going. And it's making judgments all along the way. And I'm going to challenge you today. In fact, the very title of my message is, "The Ache is the Invitation." The ache is the invitation. You know, you have something on your website that says grow, serve, and transform. And I wrote my message so I can stay on point. If you know anything about my upbringing, the last thing I do is stand behind the pulpit. But today I'm going to stay here, and I'm going to stay on point. And honey, I'm going to try to stay as reserved as possible. They're not quite in the Conway home just yet. There are places where a guest speaker is expected to walk into a room and carry answers. Preferably 3 points, 1 poem, and a dramatic closing, and enough certainty to make everybody else feel spiritually undressed. I did not come carrying that. I did not come to recruit anyone to my faith. I did not come to convince you that my path must become your path. I did not come to carry a fence. I came carrying a bridge. I come from the Christian tradition. It has given me language, beauty, wisdom, community, and hope. It has also given me questions. Some of those questions are big. Some of those questions make religious people feel uncomfortable. Oh, yes. A few might actually get me removed from the church group chat, and it has happened several times. Those questions led me to create something called Gloves Off Theology. Gloves Off Theology actually exists because I believe faith should be strong enough to survive honest questions. Faith should not require padding, pretending, or shutting down our minds so that we can open up our hearts. From that work came a series called Beyond the Pew. And Beyond the Pew begins with a simple belief. Wisdom has never signed an exclusive contract with any one religion. Not ever. No tradition owns every question. No sacred text answers every human ache in exactly the same way. No spiritual community has to become the sole source of another person's truth. Sometimes we are simply a source, a light, a question, a shovel, and maybe even a crowbar when an old belief has been nailed down by fear, shame, and tradition. We help people dig. We help people see. We help create enough safety for people to listen to what may be true within them. My personal purpose in life, this is my purpose statement, Joe Conway's purpose statement, is to cultivate an environment for your success, not for mine. My success comes when I'm able to fulfill my purpose. And your purpose statement should always travel. It shouldn't make a difference if you're a janitor, a preacher, a CEO, an executive, or just someone that's handing someone a meal. My purpose, again, is to cultivate an environment for your success. Over time, I've learned that success is not making another person believe everything that I believe. Success is helping create a space where people can grow into who they were meant to become. That is why I feel such a connection to Spiritual Soul Center. Your language is simple, and powerful. Grow, serve, transform. But also be and express love. Oh yeah, I read your website. Those words sound beautiful when life is peaceful, right? It's easy. We just came back from California, went to go see the mountains, saw a faithful geyser. Does everybody realize what a faithful geyser actually is? Because we didn't go to Yellowstone. A faithful geyser is one that you can set your clock to, right? So we got geysers all over the planet, but there's only 3 that are faithful. Obviously Yellowstone. The one that we went to over there in Napa Valley, wine country's got a faithful geyser. There's another one in New Zealand. That's the last one on the planet. All the other ones are just geysers. You can't set your watch to it or nothing. And I found that so fascinating. We relaxed. We went to Sterling Winery, had just a great time. Drink lots of water when you're drinking wine in the middle of a desert. Just want you to know this. Drink lots of water. Okay. It was wonderful. It was peaceful. It was refreshing. But that's not where meaning often lives when things are at peace. Your love gets tested. Your growth, serve, and transform, be and express love gets tested when life is painful. You want to find out how good you are? Get out of the peace and the joy and the happiness. Get into some pain and let's see how you show up then. What does love do when somebody is suffering? What does spirituality do when the world feels broken? What do we do with the ache when we feel it in our chest when we see another human being hurting? Most of us know that ache. We know that hurt. We see a child who is hungry, a family losing its home, a person sitting alone in grief, a neighbor who cannot get to a medical appointment, a community shattered by violence, someone being treated as less human simply because of their race, their religion, their gender, their sexuality, their disability, their income, their nationality, or some other label that we as a society would just throw on people. You know, those people. I just had a thought go through my head that was inappropriate, but I'm not going to say it. Just want you to know I'm still a sinful human being. It's a preacher ain't got nothing to do with it. We see it. Something tightens inside of us. Sometimes it's sadness. Sometimes it's anger. Sometimes it's fear. Sometimes it's helplessness. Sometimes all 4 show up at once, carrying luggage and asking where they're sleeping that night. Our phones have made us witnesses to more suffering than the human mind was ever designed to carry at one time. I mean, think about it. Just before breakfast, you can see a war, you can see hunger, you can see disaster, cruelty, political chaos, and somebody arguing with a cashier over a daggone coupon. And that's before you leave the house. And you're carrying that all day. You want to talk about it at the water cooler. Do we still do water coolers at work? You know, or the break room. The nervous system barely has time to put it on its shoes. We feel the ache and then we face a choice. We can numb it. That's what a lot of us have a tendency to do, right? We can stroll past it. Maybe I can get to a funny joke or something like that. We can turn it into outrage. Oh, the unmitigated goal, right? We can use another person's suffering to prove that our political side is more righteous. Oh, we like that one. Yes, don't we like that one in this current administration? Sometimes it's even tough for me to say the number 47 at times. 45, 46, 49, 48, 49. Skip right on over 47. Or we can listen. We can post something impressive and move on if you want. The ache may be telling us something. The ache is not proof that we are broken. It may be the evidence that our humanity is still awake. We're really hard on ourselves. But the mere fact, the singing was going on and I was preparing for this movie, G.I. Jane. Maybe some of you all are familiar with Demi Moore. And in that particular movie, the Master Sergeant He says, you know what's good about pain? It lets you know that you're not dead yet. That's the same thing with that aching that we feel on the inside. When you see something and it just gets you, makes you angry, makes you fearful, makes you want to do something. That means that you're still awake. But that ache is not the whole assignment. The ache is information. It tells us that suffering is present. It does not automatically tell us how to respond wisely. That is where compassion begins. You see, empathy says, I feel some of what you feel. Compassion, though, says, I feel you, and I am moving towards your well-being. Empathy encounters pain. Compassion encounters pain carrying water. Empathy can sometimes overwhelm us, but we absorb so much suffering and that can become and make us frozen or exhausted or desperate to escape. But compassion remains tender. But it also becomes grounded. It also allows us to use care without drowning. Compassion gives us a tender heart and a strong back. We need both. A tender heart without strength may collapse beneath the weight of the world. Strength without tenderness can become cruelty with an excellent posture. Know anybody like that? Sacred traditions across history have wrestled with this tension. We should be careful not to say that all faiths teach exactly the same thing. They do not. Faiths disagree about God, about the self, suffering, salvation, death, eternity, and what happens after somebody eats the last slice of pizza without asking. Tiffany. Pizza is one of my wife's favorite. Is it a food? I don't know. It is. It's one of her favorite things. Those differences matter. We do not honor sacred traditions by throwing them into one giant theological smoothie. We honor them by listening carefully. And when we listen carefully, we find that different traditions can still meet at a certain human crossroad. Compassion is one of those crossroads. The Hebrew Scriptures, one of the words actually connected to compassion is rechamen. It is related to the Hebrew word rechem, meaning wound. We should not build an entire theology from a word root, but the image is powerful. Compassion is not distant sympathy. It is the recognition that another's life is connected to our own. Their suffering matters because they belong to the human family. The prophet Micah describes spiritual faithfulness this way: do justice, love kindness, and walk humbly with your God. Justice, kindness, humility. Not merely believing the correct things. By the way, what are the correct things? So it depends which culture you're from, what house you grew up in, what street you grew up in. Your zip code can say more about your health care than your genetics. Sorry, that was my healthcare side that popped out there for a second. I apologize. Jesus tells a similar story in the parable commonly called the Good Samaritan. Most of us are familiar with this one. Man's attacked, beaten half dead, left on the side of the road. The religious person walks by, keeps on walking. Now I'm sorry, knowing my background and knowing where we are right now, that would blow my mind. Absolutely, positively blow. Where was the ache to say, oh, someone's hurt? Maybe I should at least call 911. They had cell phones back then, I'm sure. But the bottom line is that this person is, I would yearn upon this person and be like, okay, we got to get this taken care of. I see a lot of accidents as I travel from Wilmington up to the Raleigh area. I work in Mooresville on Tuesdays and Thursdays. That's when I'm required to be in the office. And every single accident that I see, by the way, I love those Geico trucks that kind of clear the highway and stuff like that and get those things taken care of. But I pray every single time I go past them. I try not to rubberneck because we got enough of those folks that are slowing me down. That's my personality. But I do pray, and I'm like, God, I just hope that person's okay. I hope they're alive. I hope all is well. And it always makes me feel good when I see people standing outside the vehicle and not someone trapped on the inside of the vehicle. Because believe it or not, they are designing those vehicles to keep you alive, keep you and me alive. So religious leaders, they see him. They keep moving. The Samaritan stops. That little detail matters. This was a person that did not get along real well with the Jewish society. Not politically, not religiously, not anything. They were the outcasts. The one that everybody would have said, they won't stop. Stop. And listen to this, because this really blows my mind every single time I read the story. I can't get over it. Jesus makes the hero the outsider, the person many listeners would have distrusted. The guy who doesn't look right, the gal who's not wearing the right dress. But the Samaritan sees the wounded man, and the Greek says he was moved with compassion. In the gut is what the Greek implies. You ever love someone? It just makes you feel some kind of way? Here. I'm not even going to go here. That's where your heart is, right back here. Just being separated from Tiffany last week while I was at a strategic planning meeting was boring. I left her long messages. I joked around with her, and one day I just sent her an emoji of where we were strategically planning. One of those emojis was an atomic bomb. That's people trying to get along in a room that aren't getting along in a room. It just makes you feel some kind of way. When my son called us a few weeks ago and told us he had been in an accident, something happened on the inside. I cannot explain it. It comes from the limbic system. That's your inner brain. It is the part of your brain that does not have language. And we will make statements like, I just don't know. It just doesn't feel right. That's because we have no way of expressing how we feel on the inside so that the hearers might understand where our position is. And that's the best we can muster up. I just don't know. It just doesn't feel right. Oh, Timothy, you were in an accident? Are you okay? Are you okay? Yeah. In his gut, he looked and saw something that wasn't right, but it wasn't enough to be moved in the gut. He literally did the following. He stopped. It wasn't just an emotional response. He walks towards the man. He touches him. He treats his wounds. He places him on his animal. He pays for his care and rearranges his schedule. That is compassion. I went preacher emojis for a second. I'm sorry. I felt like I was coming strong there. Not everybody's used to that. The story does not ask whether the wounded man earned help. When are we going to stop asking that, I want to say, BS question? I don't care where you've been, what you've done. Do you need help? You do? Then let's get you the help that you need. And I'm willing to be a conduit for that. And I want to balance this just a hair, right? Because there's all sorts of faiths that address this. The Buddhist collection of wisdom, I believe is called the Dhammapada, if my memory serves, teaches that all beings tremble before violence and that life is dear to all. Therefore, we should place ourselves in another person's position and refuse to harm with the life that I'm living. My life should be one that exemplifies do no harm. Gee, I seem to recall that from healthcare somewhere. How about in other texts that describe the spiritual mature person as one who sees the happiness and suffering of others as connected to their own? What about the Jewish Mishnah teaches that destroying one's life is like destroying an entire world? You know why that is? Because every single one of you carry an entire world. You carry your ancestors. You carry the people that came before you. You carry the people that poured into your life. You carry the people that are continuing to pour into your life. You carry your neighbors. They may not be here this morning, but you're carrying them here. So to not have respect for one human life is indeed not to have respect for the world. Because you don't know what your neighbors are going through, or how they got to where they got to, or why they're living next to you, or what brought them to Wilmington, or how long they're going to be here. Only thing you know is what you see from across the street when they haven't cut their grass in the last week and a half. Oh, why don't you walk your narrow behind across the street and cut it for them? Why don't you go ask them if you can help? Instead of just looking at it, complaining about it. I need to move on. Otherwise we'll be here to 3 o'clock and y'all ain't into that. I am going to skip. I am definitely going to skip. So I say this to you to think differently. Not because we all agree, we don't. Not because we're all the same, we're not. But because our lives are woven together. These traditions are not identical. Their differences should not be erased. But again and again, they bring us to the same difficult questions. How wide is your circle? Who counts to you? Who deserves dignity? Whose suffering is allowed to interrupt your plans? Who are you willing to see as fully human? I never forget when I was at the hospital, I was doing back when we were allowed to say the words diversity, equity, and inclusion, I was over community health and engagement. I was director of health equity and human experience at Novant, or as I like to say, Legacy New Hanover Regional Medical Center.
Yes.
Amen. And I was doing a DEI training, and I had a lady come up to me. Look, please don't hold this against her. Don't think ill of her. I didn't. She says to me, she goes, well, Joe, I'm really struggling because of my background. My family was maybe a little racist, and I'm just really, really struggling. And Joe, with your color, just because you're a little bit lower than me, I really appreciated everything that you said. Now, the people that were standing around me took 2 steps back. And I was like, I hear you. I see where you are. Let's continue this conversation. And we did. She didn't mean anything by it. I want to hear you. I want you to hear me with this. She didn't mean anything by it. When are we going to stop wearing our feelings on our shoulders? I am Generation X, so there's a piece of me that really doesn't care.
Right.
I see I got some other Xers in the room. You can only push us so far, and then we're like, screw it. Oh, almost held up that finger, didn't I? But there's got to be, at some point, when I'm looking at the person in front of me, and I'm not dinging them for their upbringing, their whatever they've been through, right? They're transparent enough, and they feel safe enough with me to make that statement. Do you know how blessed you are in that moment? Because the rest of us, we hold back. Oh, I would never say it. Or we just avoid the conversation altogether. She felt comfortable enough. See it as a blessing and not a curse. It's not a curse. It's another human being talking to another human being trying to live this thing called life. Johnny Cash, the man in black, right? He wore black to resonate with those around him. He did that on purpose because he was interested in those who were impoverished, those who were in prison, those who couldn't make ends meet. John Lennon just wanted us to get along. My personal favorite is Prince. He put into every single lyric and song a way for us to come together and to move forward. And if you look at each one of those individuals, you will find they came from very different walks of life, but they had a very parallel message, very congruent message. I don't know what time it is, but somebody keep me honest. Compassion does not mean abandoning your boundaries. I want to make this clear. Unconditional love does not require unconditional access. You can hope someone heals without giving them another key to your house. You can forgive and still require accountability. You can refuse revenge while also refusing abuse. You can love someone from a distance that keeps everyone safe. So I'm not asking you to walk into danger blindly. Love without truth can become enabling. Truth without love can become a weapon. Compassion requires both. It needs tenderness, but it also needs wisdom. It needs courage. It needs boundaries. It needs justice. I think at this time I'm just going to jump right over here to the end. You have 3 words. And I broke them down, but we're not going to go all the way into them because I feel as though you all live them. Growth means becoming more teachable. That's it. If you can't be taught some things, I love it when people say, well, you know, Joe, that's just how I am. In fact, I just wrote a post about that. That's just how I am. Neuroscience says different. One, on the healthcare side, let me tell you, you got a terminal disease and you got a whole bunch of reasons, maybe children, family, relationships to live for. And all I tell you is you got to go through a little chemotherapy or you got to take this pill and all of a sudden you find a reason to swallow that pill or get in there for that chemotherapy because, see, you had reasons. And you formed a new neural pathway when you started following the protocol or the plan of care, as we say in healthcare. Oh, yes. Stay teachable. Grow. Even at the tough stuff. You were brought up one way to think one way about a group of people or about that person across the street or maybe about the immigrants that are in our land. By the way, the majority of us are immigrants. Some of us were brought here. But the bottom line is, get over it, right? Let's move on. I just worked with a team this week that was so stuck for what happened to them a year ago. I can't change what happened to you a year ago. And that was in business, folks. Business. Your second one is serve. Service begins when compassion becomes specific. Yet, very specific. You know something I notice that you all do? I'll tell you what you do. You're so specific that you will provide a meal. You'll provide a ride. You'll make a donation. You'll cast a vote. You will apologize when necessary. Now just take that in, because some of us have problems with the words I'm sorry, or I apologize, or I take ownership. It also looks like a boundary, a visit, learning someone's name and how to pronounce it. Let's do better about that. Listening without preparing a response. You know that person that's playing double dutch with you? They just can't wait for you to stop talking so they can just jump in. Oh, but I've got to tell you about this. You know, okay, stop. Sitting beside someone whose pain cannot be fixed. You ever done that? You ever done that? Sometimes service changes an entire system. And then there's the word transform. I love this word from the Greek because on one hand, it is the caterpillar going into the cocoon and coming out a butterfly. But do you know how long that takes? First of all, the caterpillar's got to eat quite a bit of food. That part I resonate with. Right? I think at some point in time, whatever cocoon I grow into, I always tell my wife when she's rubbing my back, I say, I can feel my wings. I can feel my wings. They're coming. They're coming. I don't know if the good Lord or the Heavenly Father of the universe is going to give us wings. I'm going to be a bad black man if I got some wings. I kid you not. Y'all ain't going to see me at home. Forget that room. I'll just be flying all over the universe. Where's Joe? I don't know. He went that way. And that kind of thing. But yeah, that transformation process, give yourself time. When I used to teach about bias mitigation, the first thing I would tell the class is, forgive yourself. Forgive yourself. You're going to say the wrong thing. Woohoo! It tells me you're still human. Forgive yourself. You're going to do the wrong thing. Forgive yourself. I love people that try. I really, really do. You're telling me that you haven't quit. I'm not asking you to get it right all the time. People want to argue with me all the time. Well, you don't believe that Jesus said he was God? That's because he didn't. Well, you don't believe that, there's a rapture? Yeah, John Darby made that whole thing up. But what about the Shroud of Turin? Yeah, we know it's 13th, 14th century fabric, so that's a little late. And I understand the scientific world is still arguing over that. Well, it was cut from a piece that came from the 13th, 14th century because, they had to mend it all along the way. Well, if it's the Shroud of Turin, why'd they have to fix it? I'm going to let y'all argue with that. Y'all argue with all of that. But keep an open mind. The transformation process, give yourself time to change. Just completed a study for my team this week while we were in strategic planning. And what I found out was, you know how we used to come up with various numbers that are like, takes you 21 weeks to develop a habit, or 21 days to develop a habit, that kind of nonsense. Do you know where that came from? A plastic surgeon that saw changes within his procedure after he worked on patients. And we've been stuck with that number all along. All of a sudden that became scientific to us as human beings. When the research actually says it takes about 66 days for you to change a behavior or a habit, and there's wide variation, all depends on what it is. How hard is it? If it's really hard, it could take you longer. If it's really easy, it could take you about 40 days. Right? But we went along with the 21-day rule for a long time. You don't even want to know where the 40-day quarantine comes from, hence the word quarantine means 4. That was made up too. And we've been doing it since the early 1300s. Give yourself time. And give yourself the amount of time that you need, not the amount of time someone else tells you. So as I wrap up and we head into our meditation here shortly, what I want you to understand is that transformation is not always loud. Sometimes transformation looks like a person choosing not to repeat the harm that was done to them. Sometimes it looks like admitting we were wrong. Sometimes it looks like telling the truth after years of silence. Sometimes it looks like resting or returning. And sometimes it looks like beginning again at age 16, age 56, and age 76. Change remains possible because human beings remain capable of learning. I remind my wife all the time when she's hard on herself, which breaks my heart. But I said, God uniquely made you to adapt. You got it in you, babe. I call her kid, so if you ever were out in the street, you heard me call her kid. That's my pet name, I guess. I don't know if it's a pet name. You know, that word kid can actually be taken a lot different. I just brought you into the condo house. Yeah. Change remains possible because we remain capable. We're not frozen. We're not finished. We are more than the worst thing we have ever done. And we are more than the worst things that have ever been done to us. Perhaps God, the Spirit, the divine, love, the one source, the sacred pulse moving through creation. Perhaps the sacred is not asking us to agree on every matter. Perhaps it is asking us to stop stepping over wounded people while we argue about directions. Do you feel the ache? How many times have you ignored it? How many times have you stepped over the wounded so that you could get to what you needed to get to? You know, I love New Hanover Regional Medical Center. It's my hospital. I helped put it on the map, especially with our health equity program. Broke my heart to leave. Still have a lot of friends there. But there's one lesson that I've always carried with me from New Hanover. Between Jack Bartow, who's probably one of the best CEOs I've ever worked for. He used to tell us as leaders, if you're late to a meeting because you stopped to help a patient or a family member, that's a good reason to be late. You know what I've told my teams after I left New Hanover, as I worked with the city of Wilmington and now at UNC Health? If you're late to my meeting because you're helping a patient or a family member or just someone across the street, that's a good reason to be late. Don't step over anybody when that ache hits you.